Grief has a way of reshaping the world around us. It narrows the sound of life into a quiet, heavy stillness that feels impossible to escape. For the father in this story, that silence became part of his daily existence. Every morning he woke up expecting to hear his son's voice, and every night he went to sleep with the same unanswered question echoing through his heart. The weight of not knowing is its own kind of pain, one that lingers in the spaces between breaths. People often assume grief is loud and overwhelming, but more often it is the absence of sound that breaks a person. That stillness becomes a reminder of everything that once was, and everything that will never be again. Yet, even when it feels as though silence has taken over completely, life has a way of sending unexpected interruptions, moments that disrupt the stillness and create a small opening for connection to return. When the biker arrived at the father's doorstep, he didn't just bring dog tags. He brought the first sound to break through that heavy quiet. The rumble of the motorcycle, the hesitant knock at the door, the presence of someone carrying a message from the world the father had been trying to understand. That single moment served as a spark, not loud or dramatic, but enough to remind him that his story wasn't as solitary as he had believed. Connection often returns through the least predictable pathways. Sometimes it arrives through an unexpected person, someone whose appearance contradicts everything you imagine comfort would look like. But grief doesn't choose its healers. Life sends them. And in the presence of another human being willing to carry part of your story, the silence that once felt permanent begins to loosen its hold. One breath at a time. Compassion is one of those forces that reveals itself in the most surprising ways, often through people we might never imagine stepping into a moment of tenderness. In this story, the father expected official uniforms, structured formality, or perhaps a message delivered through traditional channels. What he did not expect was a bikera figure shaped by the open road, draped in leather and belonging to a group often misunderstood by the world. Yet compassion doesn't follow stereotypes. It doesn't dress a certain way or arrive with a predictable tone. It comes from the capacity of one human being to feel the weight of another's grief and choose to carry a piece of it. The biker, despite his tough exterior, represented exactly that choice. He wasn't obligated to keep a promise, nor was he assigned the role of a messenger. He acted out of a human impulse deeper than any title or reputation, the need to honor someone who mattered. This kind of compassion is powerful because it arrives raw and unfiltered. It isn't polished or rehearsed. It's real, and it grows from a place of genuine empathy. When he knocked on the father's door, he carried not just a set of dog tags but the emotional courage to walk into another person's pain. That act required a different kind of strength, one grounded in loyalty, respect, and the understanding that grief should never be navigated alone. Moments like these remind us that compassion isn't limited to those who look gentle or speak softly. Sometimes it's the people shaped by rough edges who feel the deepest sense of responsibility toward others. Sometimes the individuals society labels as hard or distant are the ones who step forward with the most sincerity. And sometimes the unexpected messenger becomes the reminder that kindness exists everywhere, even in places we never think to look. Dog tags may seem like simple pieces of metal, but for a soldier and their family, they carry the weight of identity, sacrifice, and a life lived with purpose. Each tag is a physical representation of everything a soldier stands for: their name, their commitment, their courage, and the silent promise they make when they step onto the battlefield. For the father in this story, the dog tags were more than an object returned to him. They were the final imprint of his son's presence. He had lived with uncertainty, haunted by the unknown, and each day without answers felt like another step deeper into grief. But the moment those dog tags were placed in his hands, something shifted. He was finally holding a piece of truth, something that connected him directly to the final chapter of his son's journey, beyond their practical purpose. Dog tags serve as emotional anchors. They become symbols of honor and remembrance, reminders of the sacrifices made by individuals willing to risk everything for something greater than themselves. In this case, the tags held memories, moments lived, friendships formed, promises made on dusty ground far from home. They were touched by the people who stood beside the soldier in his hardest hours. Carried into places where bravery was the only thing keeping fear from taking over, the biker understood this significance when he delivered them. He didn't treat the dog tags as simple belongings. He handled them with a reverence that reflected his understanding of what they meant. Through his hands, the father received not just an object, but a legacy. Holding them brought a mixture of pain and comfort, grief and pride. They represented loss, but they also represented life. They reminded him that his son had stood strong, had been valued, and had left a mark on the world that would not fade with time. Promises made in moments of hardship carry a weight that ordinary words can't match. They are born in circumstances where life feels fragile, where every action matters, and where loyalty becomes more than a concept, it becomes a bond. The promise between the soldier and the biker was forged in an environment where survival was never guaranteed. In those conditions, people learned to depend on one another in ways that civilians may never fully understand. When the soldier asked the biker to carry his story home if he didn't make it back, he wasn't asking for a favor. He was entrusting the most personal part of himself, his identity, his memory, his final truth, to someone he believed would honor it. Keeping such a promise requires a different kind of courage. It demands emotional strength, the willingness to walk into someone else's grief, and the determination to carry out a duty long after the moment that created it has passed. For the biker, fulfilling this promise meant stepping outside his world and into the life of a grieving father he had never met. He wasn't guided by protocol or obligation. He was guided by loyalty and respect, qualities often forged through shared struggle. The promise served as a bridge connecting two people whose lives would never have crossed otherwise. When he arrived at the father's door, he showed that promises made in hardship have the power to heal. They can offer clarity where there is confusion, comfort where there is emptiness, and connection where there was once only silence. In honoring the soldier's request, he delivered more than dog tags. He delivered the truth that someone had cared enough to carry a piece of the father's loss. He demonstrated that even amid chaos, loyalty endures, and that the commitments made in dark moments can bring light into the lives of those left behind. Humanity often reveals its strength in the moments when it's least expected. Even in environments shaped by conflict, hardship, or rough identities, qualities like loyalty and honor can remain untouched. In this story, the biker represented a world many people misunderstand, one often associated with toughness, rebellion, or distance from emotion. Yet beneath that hardened image existed a profound sense of responsibility, the kind that doesn't fade with time or circumstance. It was this sense of loyalty that drove him to honor the memory of the soldier he had known. He chose to carry a piece of that soldier's story across miles, through his own grief, and directly to the father who needed to hear it most. Acts like these remind us that honor is not confined to uniforms or titles. It's found in real human choices to stand by someone, to respect their memory, and to deliver a truth that brings comfort to another person's life. The father, who had lived with uncertainty and heartbreak, came face to face with a stranger who understood the value of his son's life. The biker's presence challenged every assumption the father might have had about who is capable of kindness or who carries dignity within them. This moment also shows that war may take lives, but it cannot erase the bonds formed within its harshness. The friendships built in those extreme circumstances often extend far beyond the battlefield. They leave behind stories, promises, and gestures that continue to live long after the conflict itself has ended. The biker stood on that doorstep as a reminder that the soldier's bravery and character did not vanish with his final breath. They lived on through loyalty, through someone who cared enough to ensure that the father understood the depth of his son's impact. In that quiet exchange, humanity proved itself stronger than loss, and honor became a bridge between two grieving hearts. Give me whole speech conclusion and goodbye thank you notes.